Dr. Akin here to help you win in accounting. We're going to be doing, or I'm just going to do a DIY on all things related to recording journal entries for short term liabilities. All right. So I trust that you are connected to an able professor who should be able to lecture you through this stuff. I just want to show you how to do it accurately and rightly. So we're going to do that. Hey, if you already know some of this stuff, you can two speed. You don't have to like maybe you can two speed this. Or if I'm going too quick, you can slow it down so you can just go at your own pace. All right. So we're going to be looking at short-term liabilities. Obviously, per usual, there's going to be certain terms that I need to kind of talk through so that way we can have a really good discussion. All right. So here we're going to be doing some transactions related to short-term notes payable. So let's just go ahead and set up our journal entry, right? With our journal entry format, which is account name. It's going to be date, account name, debit, and credit. All right. And then we go from there. All right. So it says on May 2nd or 22nd, we purchased $5,000 worth of inventory on credit from Fox Pro, credit terms, and 30. All right, so what are we doing here? Obviously, we're going to put the date 4/22 in there because it's April. Now, what are we receiving? What are we receiving? We're receiving merchandise. So merchandise is going up, yeah. So we're going to debit merchandise inventory for that 5,000. And what was the source of payment? Source of payment was credit. So we're going to go ahead and credit accounts payable. Yep, we're going to credit accounts payable, Fox Pro. Very important. I know for my students, I'm very anal that you put the customer's name. So you want to make sure you do that. Maybe your professor is more relaxed than I am, but you want to make sure you just specify the account. So we're done there. On April 22nd, we purchased $5,000 worth of inventory. So we moved. So May 23rd, though, it looks like we're replacing that accounts payable for a notes payable. Now, this is where we kind of get into discussion because what I tell my students is that accounts payable, I probably have to zoom out a little bit so you all can see, but accounts payable is for transactions that are 30 days or less. So usually if something is due 30 days or less, we put it in accounts payable. We usually use notes payable for transactions that are 30 days or more, right? So what we have in this situation is that Fox Pro, we thought that we can pay Fox Pro the 5,000 in 30 days. So we put it in accounts payable. But then we realized on maybe day 29, closer to day 30, we cannot pay them back within 30. So we asked them for like a payment arrangement of sorts. You've heard of this, right? So this payment arrangement, we're going to say, hey, instead of it being accounts payable where we pay you back in 30 days, so we debit that, can we give you cash of $400? So we're going to credit cash. Can we give you cash for $400? And can we sign a short-term notes payable? So can we sign a notes payable agreement for the difference, which is 4,600? So that would be the journal entry, right, from May 23. Now on July 15th, we move on July 15th, we borrowed money from the bank, tradition. So we go to the bank and we ask for money. Well, what's going to go up on that day? Cash is going to go up because they're going to give us the cash of $12,000. But what is also going to go up is our liability, meaning we're going to have to pay back Spring Bank, I believe is the name, Spring Bank, that $12,000 later down the road. Sounds good? So now we get to a journal entry where where there's a question mark on the date. It says we paid the amount due on the note to Fox Pro at maturity. That term maturity is so critical. You want to write this down, this word maturity. I'm not going to see if you were in my class, I would have made a joke saying like, how mature are you? But because this is being recorded and I want you to think highly of me, I'm not going to do that. So how mature are you? No, I'm kidding. So with maturity, and I may have spelled that wrong, but no worries. With maturity, I tell my class that maturity is the date of the loan after, or excuse me, is the repayment date. Just keep it simple. It's the repayment date or when the loan is due. Okay, that's what maturity means. So it says we're paying the amount that's due to Fox Pro at maturity. So we have to do some work around the calendar. Well, we go to initial journal entry where it says Fox Pro, where we signed an agreement on April 22nd. So please pay careful attention to this. On April 22nd, we signed a note for 30 days. So maturity is going to be 30 days from April 22nd. So let's say, and again, I am just gonna just make up a number, but 30 days from April 22nd should be around May 21st. Now you will want to pull out a calendar and actually count the days depending on how anal your professor is. For me, it's not a big deal if you're 1 or 2 days off because it's not going to make that much of a difference. But your professor may be a little bit anal about it, so careful attention there. So 30 days from April 22nd, I call it May 21st. So now we're repaying this loan. So if we're repaying the loan, we know for certain we're going to debit accounts payable Fox Pro for that 4,600 because that's what we owe them and we're paying it. So we want to reduce the liability. We also know that we're going to pay cash. That's what we know. We're going to pay cash for said liability, right? Like obviously, all right. Yeah, obviously we're paying cash for that amount. Now, what may be a little bit uncertain is how do we come up with this cash amount? Because we're not just paying the principal amount, which is 5,000, we're also paying any interest right here. We're paying any interest connected to it, which is 15 days. Which then brings us to a really important question. How do we calculate interest? How do we calculate interest? So you want to write this down. I tell my students a simple formula to calculate interest is PIT. P stands for principal, I stands for interest, T stands for time. PIT. So this is how we calculate interest is with PIT. Principal is the face value of the loan, face value of loan. I spelled interest wrong. Interest is the interest rate, right? The interest rate or the money we pay to use the money we borrow or the borrowed money, whatever. Tomato, tomato. Okay, and time, you want to write this down. This is very critical. Time is the length of the loan divided by 360 days. 360 days is the number of years in the number of days in a year. Now you're probably saying like, hey, how is that true? It's not 360, it's 365. Well, 360 is the banking. That's the banking, banking calendar. The banking calendar uses 360, not 365. The 5 day difference is it's banking holidays. So time is going to be the length of the loan divided by 360. So here in this case on the 21st, which we already discovered for Fox Pro, we're paying at maturity. We're not just paying the principal, my friends, we're also paying interest. So we want to debit interest expense, all right? How do we calculate interest expense is PIT, principal, interest, time. So we know that the principal is 4,600. We know that the interest, according to the problem, is 15%. And we know, okay. And we also know that the the time is going to be what was it, 60 days? So 60 divided by 360. That's what we know. The principal is 4,600. The problem tells us that 15% is the interest, 60 day. So that gives us then $115 as the interest expense, right? And you can check my math on that. You can check my math on that. But yes, so it's going to be 115. So that means our cash is going to be the sum of principal and interest. So our cash is going to be $4,715. So that will help us to do May, or this problem here. Now we have another problem, which is annoying, but we have another problem again where they want us to find the date. Why do they want us to find a date? Because this is related to maturity. So they're saying we paid the amount due on the note to Spring Bank at maturity. We know maturity is the repayment date when the loan is due. So we need to go back to initial transaction. Well, on July 15th, we borrowed 12,000, 120 days. 120.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Oh,
can hear you now.
all right. How much cut out? Was it a lot or a little bit?
It was a lot.
No.
Just like the last 3 minutes. The last journal entry.
This journal entry, I need to redo this journal entry.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you. This is what happened when you work from home and your wife does not care about what you do. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna delete this. She gonna use her AirPods, but it's okay. I'm gonna resume. All right, y'all doing good. Just stay with me, okay? So let me get back into my YouTube mode. All right, all right. Here we go. All right, so on November 15th, where did we? So now let's look at this problem where it says paid the amount due to Sandy Spring maturity. So what we need to do is go back to the original transaction to see what's happening. Well, on July 15th, we signed a 120-day note. A note. 120 days is 4 months. 4 months from July 15th is November 15th. All right. Now you do the math. Like I'm not, it depends on your professor. Like if you get around like November 17th or November 12th, cool. To me, it's all the same thing. But you want to pull out, a calendar and kind of walk through it. You probably get around November 15th. I want to believe. So now that we established what the date is, we can now begin to pay off the amount. Well, we know if we're paying off a liability, we want to debit the liability. The liability was for 12,000 face value, principal of the loan. But then also we know that we're going to have to pay interest. Remember, it takes money to borrow money, right? We can't just borrow the 12,000. We have to pay an interest to it. How do we calculate interest? We go principal multiplied by percent. That percent is 10. And then we multiply by the number of days, 120 over 360. So that should get you 400. So we know then that cash is what we're paying this debt with, is going to be the sum total of the principal and interest. So 12,400. So it looks like on 12/6, we borrowed $8,000 cash from Citibank by signing a 45-day 9% note. So that's going to be a debit to cash because we're walking into the bank and we're going to leave with cash. But we did sign a note. So we go notes payable to Citibank for the same amount. Yeah. And we move. Now, on year two, so no, excuse me, on 12/31, let's talk about this really quickly. So now what happens is we have a December 6th transaction. December 6th transaction, that's 45 days. Well, 45 days in December 6th is going to give us around, I don't know, January 15th. Let's go January 15th. But the problem is we need to capture the interest for the year, for year one. But we have a note that is impacting multiple years. So what we need to do, you want to pay careful attention. We want to figure out the interest up until the last day of the year. So if we started December 6th, we need to calculate the interest from December 6th to December 31st, right? Because we need to capture the interest for that year. So we're going to debit interest expense and we're going to credit interest payable. Okay. We're not going to pay off the interest right now because we pay interest at maturity, right? That's the repayment date. We don't pay it in between the loan life. We pay it at the end of the loan's life. Got it? But we need to account for the interest within the year of the loan because this loan is impacting multiple years. So we go debit interest expense, debit interest payable. The formula stays the same though. It's going to be principal of 8,000 multiplied by whatever the interest rate is, which is 9%. Now watch this, you all, is then going to be multiplied by time. Now the time is not 45 days. It's going to be the days between 6 and 31. The days between 6 and 31, I believe, is 25. Okay. So there's 25 days between when the note was established and when the end of the year is. So it's 25. So that means $50 is what we're capturing in the first year. But we're also saying that we're going to pay it back at maturity. That's why we're putting it into interest payable. We're going to pay it back at maturity. Good. So now we're at maturity, which is going to be again, I'm going to go 115. I didn't count every single day, so I may be off, but I'm gonna just say 115. I'm gonna say 115. Okay. It may be it may be 120. I don't know, but I'm just estimating, right? Okay, so now we're at maturity. So we know that we need to pay back the principal. The principal is that 8,000. That's what we need to pay back. But then we also need to pay back interest, right? Expense. But watch this, you all. We're not only paying back interest expense, but we also want to pay back that interest payable that we said we were going to pay back on December 3rd, that we were going to pay in December 31st. So the interest payable is going to be $50, which is only 25 days of the 45 days. So interest expense is going to be the remaining days. It's going to be the days between December 31st and January 15th, which is, again, that's going to be the difference between the 25 days that we accounted for and the 45 days that we do need to account for, which is 20 days. Yeah. So we do principal multiplied by interest rate multiplied by 20 days, right? Because we already accounted for 25 days. We just need to account for the remaining 20. So our cash then is going to be the sum of all three of those. Yeah. So it's going to be $8,090. And that is how you record journal entries. Okay. That is how you record journal entries for short-term payables. Okay. All right, guys. Any questions?